morning, Coach Daly. Thank you for coming in today.
Good morning, Coach Scott. Pleasure to be on, and I appreciate you inviting me.
This is episode 120, and it's nothing against you that we've waited so long for your episode. It's just you've been busy with admissions, and I don't want to bother you, and I think this is a good time for it.
I think 120 is a great round number. It's exciting. It's you've had an amazing thing going for how many years is it now that to get to 120? Has this been 3 or 4 years?
This has been, 2 years?
2 years.
Yeah, so started during COVID.
Yeah. I would describe that as prolific.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Good work. And they're all really interesting. I can say that being an admissions guy and walking around and checking out the projection screens in Cary Hall and seeing who's upcoming, it's always an exciting kind of talking point to be able to tell families who are interested that look at this guy and this group that are interviewing all these interesting people, faculty, students, coaches, and hearing about books and hearing life stories. It's really cool, and to just be able to go on to YouTube and check it all out it's an awesome resource. So thank you guys for doing it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I figure people who are coming to Gilman, whether they're being hired or they're coming here as a student, can actually get to know some of our people before they get here, which is nice.
Oh yeah, for sure. I remember watching a couple of the episodes. One with Del Dressel I found particularly funny and amusing as a graduate dad of a current 5th grader, I believe, and a great player and student. But somewhere early on, he said in the episode, I remember him saying like, "Oh, so we're just getting like right into this, Jake, huh? You're not gonna like warm me up a little bit? So thanks for allowing me to settle in here as we get started."
Yeah.
I'd love the Del Dressel kind of to follow his lead there.
Right. Well, I think that's back when I was just getting, my feet wet with interviewing, and I came at him with a really tough question right off the start, like, what does Gilman mean to you? And his head exploded. Yeah. And it was like, all right, let's rewind. Let's just do a little small talk.
That's kind of like an interview question. That's like an admissions question that I'll ask an 8th grader. Right? Why Gilman? Why do you want to come to Gilman?
Yeah.
Right? And it's those big questions can be tough. It's a lot to unpack,
So when you're interviewing somebody who's prospective student here at Gilman, what are you looking for in those interviews? Like, what is the common thread amongst all of the people who end up coming here?
Yeah.
Like, what do they say in the interview that you really get a sense of their interest or their passion for Gilman?
Yeah, I would start by saying everybody has different comfort level in interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some kids are going to be like really naturals and they'll just kind of go on and tell stories about themselves and about others and show like a real kind of like zeal, zest for like life and learning, and that those ones are easy, right? They make like being an interviewer easy when you have kids that just want to go on and on about their various experiences, right? But not everybody's cut from that cloth, right? So you can't just look for like the outgoing kids, but so you look for kids that coming into it like have some sense of what they want from school, right? What their values are, that they do know something about Gilman when they come here, that they're not just checking it off the list of schools that they're visiting, that they're genuine, right? They come across as like authentic with what they're sharing. It's not too kind of couched, right?
Scripted.
Too scripted, right? Yeah. And you need some script, right? Kids are going to need scripts for that kind of performance, because on some levels it is they're putting themselves out there. But I think having a feeling like when you're talking to him that he wants to give you something of himself, that there's a combination of an interview. It's tricky because you'll get kids that'll say things like, well, I don't like talking about myself, which is actually a positive, because they have some of that humility where they don't want to boast, and then you say to them, but that's what this is all about. Is we want to hear about you, right? And what you would do at Gilman, for example. So that's a really fun part of the job, is talking to kids and hearing their stories.
So what is the state of the admissions process right now? I know you have your busy seasons, right? Like what is happening right now in mid-April of 2023?
Yep. Now is the if it's like ultra busy tax season, it's like the not as busy admission season, right? Mm-hmm. The middle of spring is when we slow down a little we have our classes made for the newly enrolled kids coming in. We've had all the welcome events. We're in the process of like onboarding the kids, not getting them their schedules set, having them a sense of what they're going to do over the summer to get ready, doing some of the placement testing. So we're at a good point now where we get to look at, as the seasons come to an end, like who's coming in, right? And be excited about the kids that are coming into each entry point. So thanks for all those admissions questions. It's great. It's good to be able to talk through that. I'm looking forward to talking about a little bit about this book that I brought here. Did you get a sense? Have you ever read Sacred Hoops?
No, but Kobe McClellan in my English class was reading this book, and I was interested in it when he had it out on his desk. But I don't know much about Phil Jackson.
Oh my gosh, it's funny because when you talk about a hard question, I would say like when you say, "What book are you going to bring with you?" For me, that's a tough question.
It says a lot.
Right? It's why I don't put what book I'm reading at the bottom of my title on emails, because it's a lot of pressure for me to go out there and share what book that I really want to bring to something like this. So the reason I chose this one is, one, like this book is like 25 to 30 years old, which I thought is kind of interesting, because as you look at things coming off the shelves, out of circulation, and trends, and kind of like on the front cover of this, it talks about like mindfulness. And, you know, we spend a lot of time in our community today being intentional about that, right? And wellness and health and all that kind of stuff. But this guy, Phil Jackson, who, if viewers don't know him, he was a legendary player for the Knicks, right? He was roommates with Bill Bradley, right? U.S. Senator and great player. He went to Princeton and ran for president, right? So he's a big time guy who was a great athlete and then an even better coach. And he had, when this book was written, Phil Jackson had just finished 3 titles with Michael Jordan as his top player, as many of you know, with the Bulls, right? And he wrote a book about it, his journey. Not really. The book Sacred Hoops is not about those 3 titles as much as it is about like managing relationships and personalities between the coaching staff and the players. And when I came back to it, when you asked me about it, I looked and I thought, geez, this was only like part 1 of Phil Jackson when he was with the Bulls. He hadn't even started his tenure with the Lakers, where he would do the same exact thing with Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, right? In 2 of the biggest profile cities in America. And it's just kind of, it was really interesting as we think about like being a teacher and a coach. You're a coach, right? What is it that makes coaches really successful at every level, right? And I think there's something to Phil Jackson's message that's really fun to talk about within the context of like teaching and learning and coaching at Gilman, which we both do.
I was actually talking to my roommate now, Sam Denius. He lives on campus with me, about like what makes a successful coach, and what came to mind is there has to be a little bit of fear in your coach. You know, you've got to master that balance of being fear and loved, I think.
Little bit of a Machiavellian statement there,
right?
The kind of the Prince, the model of is it better to be feared than loved? Or, you know, one of those old teaching adages, I hope they don't use it anymore, but they did when I started as a fellow here, was you know, you don't smile until after Thanksgiving.
As a teacher.
As a teacher.
Right.
Because you don't want to, you know, you can always loosen up, but early on, and I kind of get that message on one level as a young teacher, but at the same time, it's going to be tough to develop strong relationships if you're spending the first 2.5 months of the year with a scowl on your face. You know, so there's a balance there.
It's such a personality thing being a good teacher and a coach. Like, you've got to be very comfortable with who you are.
Comfortable in your own skin, right?
Yeah.
And you said it, like somebody like Phil Jackson, you think about it as a lacrosse coach, right? The name that often comes up, Justin George, who is a Gilman graduate who played at Duke. He's a great guy to ask about John Danowski as a coach at Duke. When you're thinking of guys who are comfortable in their own skin, I mean, in that sport, I would think it's pretty hard to find somebody more comfortable in their own skin than Danowski, who's been successful. Yeah,
and growing up, I always watched Danowski on the sideline and thought he was kind of like a rah-rah cheerleader, kind of like he was always clapping at his players. He's very known as being very positive.
Yeah.
But I've also heard stories about him where he's like snapped and went off on guys, and he's like crazy and a hothead. So it seems like he also has that balance of like fear and positivity and love and encouragement.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. If you strike it well, it seems like he does, right? And has for a long time.
So what is Phil Jackson like in this book? What is he? He writes it, right? It's his.
He writes it. Yeah, he's a practicing. I think at the time of this, he's Buddhist, right? And he has and he reads a lot of Taoist kind of scriptures, and so he's very spiritual, right? And also is big on the, being in the moment, letting things go, kind of looking forward, very much what is happening now instead of what the results are going to be. He's certainly somebody who is willing to give the spotlight to, for example, Michael Jordan, and be able to sit back and say, and I think this is a testament to a great coach, is that when they win, right, when the team wins, it's the team who's won and the players. And there's not a lot of, I did it. Phil Jackson won this game, right? He seems like he has humility and is willing to be the kind of the puppet master who helps the players maximize their strength without needing to take a lot of the credit. Because one of the things that Phil Jackson got knocked for is, or maybe not a knock, but they would say, oh, well, it's easy to win a national championship when you have Michael Jordan, the greatest player who's ever played the game. But before Phil Jackson got there, and I think it was Doug Collins, who was a good player and coach, and his son Chris, I think, is at Northwestern now as a coach, but he could never get Jordan quite to where he needed to be as a player to get beyond being the leading scorer in the NBA, but not getting the team where they needed to be. So Phil Jackson came in and did a good job of pulling strings as getting Jordan to buy into, if you make everybody around you better, you may have to give up your scoring title, right? You have to do other things, but if you can buy into doing that, right, we're going to be better as a team. You give up that me for we, as you've probably heard before.
Yeah, and that's a really difficult. I mean, Michael Jordan, best basketball player of all time, like getting him to become a team guy, like that documentary that came out a couple years ago about what's that called again?
Last Dance.
Last Dance. Right? Yeah, that was during COVID too.
Yeah.
It shows how that team, it was a real team. It wasn't just Jordan and his sidekicks.
Yeah.
It was all five guys on the floor and on the bench and the coach.
Yeah.
Like buying into what they were doing.
For sure. The Last Dance is phenomenal, right? And you a big Peloton guy, Coach Shock?
I've never been on a Peloton in my life.
Never been on a Peloton. Now's the time to get a Peloton. The prices are dropping.
Yeah, people are getting rid of them.
Right. And if you get on, one of the things that you should look up is the Last Dance ride. It's amazing. It's inspirational. It gets into, they kind of tell the story as they go through the songs of episode by episode of the Last Dance. And what is interesting about that story is not like necessarily, in my opinion, like watching the highlights of all the games, but like hearing the relational dynamics between the players.
Yeah.
And kind of working through that. And geez, I don't know if there's a more tricky sport than basketball to develop good chemistry. And as a former coach, one thing I think is a factor that you don't wear a helmet, right? You're under bright lights. There's only 5 of you. Like, things move and happen really quickly, right? And so you go on runs, you give up runs. It's an emotional, intimate sport and very much a player's sport. So to be able to and Coach Bartz, for example, here at Gilman, like he's a master at like being in tune with his players and how they're feeling. Right. Which is sometimes I think just as important as like what you're gonna like run or execute. Maybe more important to know like where is their head at this point, like coming into this timeout, right? And I know that Coach Bartz, like, he's a thoughtful, compassionate, caring man, right? And as a result, his kids feel that. So I'm sure that like Coach Bartz has moments where he's feared, right? But I
Yeah.
know there's also like such value in the moments that his players know that they're like loved by him too,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I was thinking, coaching JV lacrosse, we've been talking about toughness and ground balls and what makes a tough lacrosse player this week, because we're trying to develop that in our guys. But how about in basketball? Like, what makes a tough basketball team? What makes a tough basketball player?
Yeah, so I guess like in ground balls, win games of lacrosse, like basketball, it's often like you got to win and you might hear this across over sports, but you have to win the 50-50 balls, the loose balls, right? That could go either way, whether it's on a rebound or diving on the floor. You know, you need to make the right pass. I mean, simple stuff. Like if a guy's open in the triangle offense that the Bulls are running, you got to pass it to him and you got to trust it. If he's the open guy, he's got to make the play, right? Like in any sport, because that's going to build trust, right? And sometimes making the right pass is also a tough play, right? Because you're mentally tough to know that you have to do it, and you're mentally tough to trust in that player who maybe hasn't made a lot of shots. That they've got to be able to do it, because ultimately you're going to need that person. And then also sometimes, like, I remember hearing this in college playing at one point, Coach Metzbauer, I think, said to me, he was like, if you have an open shot and you don't take it, it's actually selfish.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, wait, what? And so, I mean, you're a shooter, like, what do you think about that? Do you believe that statement? I do.
Yeah, well, I would never pass up a shot. I mean, that's the only thing on my mind as a player is when's the ball coming to me and I'm going to shoot it. So I'd never had that, like...
So no coach ever had to say that to you?
No. I was happy enough to pull the trigger. But I know what you're saying. It's like if you're trying to be too selfless and not scoring when it's right in front of you, then you're making the wrong play. That wasn't your time to make a pass. It was your time to shoot the ball.
And isn't that kind of, we're talking about balance in coaching and balance in players, that's like a delicate balance, right, of understanding that. It's kind of a nuanced thing. We played St. Anthony's earlier this year, right, in lacrosse, and I got a text from one of my friends who was a friar, went to St. Anthony's, and he said, I've got inside scoop scouting report for your coaching staff. Friar rule number 1, don't pass the ball. You could turn it over. I was like, that's hysterical, Sean. Because he was a shooter, right? I mean, he was a shooter, and St. Anthony's can really shoot the ball. So you got to have that, sometimes having like guts and courage to take the shot. Again, like that was the Jordan thing, right? That ad years ago where he talked about all the times he's failed in his life, right? And missed the shot of like over 50%, right? Because he makes less than 50% of the shots he takes in his career. But it is that, I mean, that can be tough too, is being willing to put yourself out there and take the shot, you know?
Yeah. So. Basketball is such a special game because I always find myself relating lacrosse to basketball because the movements are all the same. The offensive schemes are really very similar. I think it translates so well. Having played basketball, like if you don't play basketball, you just don't know some of those basic movements that you get when you're playing pickup, like a pick and roll or a give and go. It all translates so well to other sports.
Yeah.
Soccer probably too.
For sure. Well, and that's why what are we really like playing sports for, right? We had a talk with our advisory a couple weeks ago where we were kind of breaking down like why are we playing these sports, these different sports? What's this like all about? And like some of it is you learn those kind of different movements. You learn how to like compete and cooperate together, how to play team defense, how to play team offense, and by similarities across sports, it helps you get better with like that spatial awareness and cooperative kind of feel of being on a team, right? Which has a lot of value to it, I think, which makes it kind of tricky when we, I know I'm guilty of it. I would think most of us as competitive athletes are. Sometimes we like we can lose perspective and have to recalibrate. Like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we spending so much time on this sport, right? If it's just a game. And so when you're reminded of like these great coaches or players who can galvanize and like bring a team together in a cooperative spirit, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's not. At some point, we got to talk about you and me playing tennis against each other.
We'll get to tennis. That's
Because
a completely different
from,
game to me.
To move from the team sport thing into the one-on-one. Talk about like intimate. The one-on-one playing against each other in tennis.
Yeah.
Is a lot. I mean, it's taken me a couple of years to recover from that match we played, and Lightning was like eating a sandwich while he was watching us. I think it was about to be like, we were like on court 9 of 9, right? In the back corner. It was like late May.
It was the hottest day of the year too.
Was it the hottest day of the year?
Yeah.
Well, that makes me feel a little bit
Well,
better.
Lightning was eating a sandwich behind me, giving me some pointers.
And he calls you Big Cat.
Big Cat. He's the first guy I met when I came to Gilman.
Okay.
And I was walking around. I was a little early, I think, and I was just doing a walk around campus, and I see some dude with his shirt off, backwards hat, like pulling balls out of the weeds by the tennis courts. And he goes, "Hey, what's your nickname?"
Right. Well, that's leadership there, right? I mean, he's pulling balls out of the weeds when nobody's looking, right? Getting ready for practice. And then he reaches out and extends a welcome to you.
He's the best.
To the community. He's talk about championships. There should be Lightning should write a sacred courts book, you know?
He already has one book.
And what's that book called?
Lightning Strikes.
That's hence the nickname.
Yes, but do you know how he got his nickname? I don't want to botch his story, but he was like playing tennis in the rain with a bunch of his friends.
Uh-oh.
And he, and then they started running around this open field, and it started, the sky broke open, there's lightning, thunder, and all of his friends left, and it was just him out on the field, and they were like, Lightning, come inside. And after that day, he was just known as Lightning.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Was that back when he was I think he went to Park. Did he go to Park School?
He went to Park.
He was a Bruin.
Yep.
And then he went to UCLA?
He went to UCLA.
Did he go there because he wanted to continue to be a Bruin?
Oh, I didn't know Park were the Bruins.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I do know that he would often stop into John Wooden's office and have a conversation with him. And that's where some of his coaching philosophy comes from, is those conversations he had with him.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's on the podcast with him. We talked about that.
Awesome.
But yeah, tennis is a different game. Tennis is probably my favorite sport right now, at least.
Yeah.
Because of the mental, psychological side of it. I just don't think there's anything. Golf, maybe. I'm just not a huge golfer. And I like how tennis is between two people, one-on-one, intimate, as you said, and the crowd. I mean, I just don't think there's any sport that's more difficult than tennis.
I think, like, when you talk about, like, bucket list experiences, I can't imagine. I know people love the Masters. That just happened. That was awesome, right? It's beautiful, Augusta, Georgia, Easter time of year, right? But going to Wimbledon, in my opinion, that's like on my top 5 places I would want to go to watch an event. But for the reasons you said, right? Like getting down there, watching those athletes back and forth with all of the culture and kind of history that's in the stands, and the way the All England Club works, which is really interesting with the attire and all that stuff, and then the grass field, and how you keep a grass court in such immaculate shape to play tennis is pretty amazing. You know where the BCC hill is back at Roland Park?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And where the big hill is where they go sledding. And
Yes.
then next to it, there's like an overgrown weed field right down across from Poly.
Yes.
And there's like fences up.
Yep.
That was like 30 years ago. Those were grass tennis courts
Wow.
of BCC.
Hmm.
And I think I heard that they're going to do something with that space to like make it some sort of nice park.
Yeah,
Like they're doing, like,
I
a
don't think
park.
BCC owns that anymore.
They don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, back in the day, those were grass courts at BCC. Which is pretty cool.
So, did you grow up playing tennis? Did you ever get involved in tennis?
Not only in the summertime I would play.
Yeah.
just kind of getting out there. But I didn't play like competitively.
Were you focused growing up on basketball, lacrosse, and what'd you play?
And football.
You played football too.
Yeah. So I played 3 sports in high school, and again, and I know we as coaches say this so much, that like the variety of playing sports is where it's at, in my opinion, right? You keep it fresh, you move on from season to season. Like anything in life, I think as teachers, like it's part of what we love, that you get to reset every year with a new group of students, a new curriculum, you add something, right? It certainly doesn't get stale if you get to keep having those new relationships and experiences. So yeah, for me, playing 3 sports is a way to do that. And then playing more sports in the summer was fun too, and some tennis.
Yeah, and I think the idea that it teaches you to compete and you're playing alongside a whole new cast of characters every season, and you learn from each other. You have different types of coaches.
Yeah.
And it's not the club, like when I walk around campus and we've got the Crabs and Team 91, and I know I've told you I've coached on both of those summer programs. I just am like, especially the young guys who are like 5 and 6 who have all their pads on and their jerseys like dragging on the floor and they're playing like a full field game. I just don't really like see it. Yeah.
It's a lot. It makes it feel like it used to be swimmers, right? Like years ago, where swimmers would think of Beth Botsford was a swimmer, went to Garrison, and then Arizona, and won medals in like the mid to late 90s. Was a contemporary of mine. She won medals in the Olympics and then stopped swimming while she was at Arizona, I think. Just it got to a point where it's like, well, back to this question, like why are we doing this, right? Why am I playing this sport? And there's only I get there's like the Gladwell like 10,000 hours or all that kind of like the mastery thing, but there must be like a certain amount of hours too where you like burn out. I'd like to know what like the book is on like what's too many hours of one thing,
right?
That it's not good, you know.
Yeah, and then when you get to the next level of like playing college lacrosse, for example, was so much time, so many hours, so much investment in this one sport that you almost will burn out if you make it there. I mean, it's just I think college programs are probably trying to think about how do we keep this sport fresh for our players, you know, in 4 years.
I would hope so, right? Especially with the guys now that are playing their 5th and 6th year with the COVID and like all these 24-year-olds that are still playing lacrosse. It's kind of wild.
And it's tough on the body too. I mean, by the time I graduated from college, I don't know if I could have held up like for another year of lifting and running and practicing. It was just, you need time to rest and recover.
And to escape from it. So like you're as a college student at Harvard, and I know that like Jake, you did some of that, the political cartoons, you had other outlets. It seems like sometimes having those opportunities to get away from it and pursue other things in a meaningful way can also keep it fresh, not just being like a multi-sport athlete. I mean, I'd love to start moving our conversation to like some of the other things, because we're not just like all about sports.
That's true.
Right? For me, for example, like I love listening to music, right? And I love seeing like Justin Baker, speaking of like up on the monitor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For his music days, he's playing at like Ram's Head, I think.
Yes.
In Annapolis, like at the end of the month. Also played sports in college. Also like a really good teacher and advisor. Right? And
super intellectual. Like he'll go deep with you about Cormac McCarthy's, allegories and symbolism, right?
Yeah. We have a lot of those people here, which is cool because they certainly keep things interesting.
Yeah, I think that's almost one of the reasons that people are attracted to teaching and the academic profession and being in schools, is that you have enough time during a day to touch all of your different things that you like to do.
Yeah.
Like I see Cody Miles running all the time, and he can do that.
Yeah.
Dallas Jacobs playing the guitar. People just have a lot of different interests that they're, Carl Connolly loves to bike,
Yeah.
in addition to doing masterpieces.
And do it really well. I'm in awe of like the skill level of some of these people. I'm more of cut from the aesthetic appreciation cloth.
That's okay.
You know, so that's like, I love listening to music. You're not gonna hear me singing it, right? I like looking at the art exhibits. Certainly don't feel like I could do that. But you know what? We tell our Gilman guys, like when they come into Carl's class as 9th graders, they maybe didn't think they have a knack for it.
Mm-hmm.
But then by senior year, they're doing awesome stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good that they get that, students get that release, they get that chance to pursue stuff that maybe they don't think. I mean, think about Luke Woodworth.
I was going to bring him up. He's
Right?
coming on Monday here.
Is he?
Mm-hmm. He's one of my favorite guys at Gilman right now.
Me too. Tell me why, in your opinion.
I think he's a very humble guy. You know, a lot of people don't know that he's a world champion sailor. I mean,
Yeah.
he was leaving my class. He was going to miss a couple classes last year. And I was like, Luke, what's going on? He's like, I'm going to Oman for the World Sailing Championships. Oman.
I know. He's been all over. And he's been a sailor but his artwork is really good too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Very impressive.
He's a well-rounded guy.
So I don't want to give away his book recommendation, but it fits
Okay.
our conversation. It's called Range. Have you heard of this?
Mm-mm.
It's about generalists and specialization, generalizing, and it's exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And the first chapter is about Roger Federer versus Tiger Woods and how Roger Federer played different sports and Tiger only did golf. And the whole book is about that. Like, why do some generalists succeed versus specializing at something?
Yeah.
So,
Well, that was what Tim Holly, as the athletic director, used to say. He used to talk about Gilman promotes well-rounded generalists, right? It was one of his instead of specialists, and the value of that, right? I think we would all agree that Roger Federer is a good example of how to do things well. I don't know if is there anybody in the world who doesn't like Roger Federer? Is there anybody that you've ever talked to who said, like, I can't stand Roger Federer?
mm-mm.
I mean, I'm sure they're out there. I haven't come across that person yet.
So what does he do that makes it like that? Because people hate Tom Brady, but I feel like Tom Brady...
Have you interviewed Armand Lawson?
No.
Well, Armand Lawson is a huge Roger Federer fan. So he's probably the best person in our community to ask about what is it about Roger Federer. I just think he would be the person at Wimbledon that I would want to be watching, for example.
He might be done. I think he's done.
I think he's done, but he would have been like, his game is so well-rounded. He does everything well,
Mm-hmm.
right? From the baseline to his like comportment, right? The way he handles things, the way he handles an interview.
Right.
He's gracious, right? He's not a hothead. He doesn't boast. He's the closest thing that he's ever done, at least optically, to be like arrogant, in my opinion, is that sometimes his shoes have a gold RF on the white shoes.
Right.
But I think we'll give him that, right?
He deserves that.
He deserves that. He's earned the RF.
And other people on the tour like him. I mean, doesn't seem like he has people talking poorly about him behind the scenes.
It doesn't seem like it, right?
Mm-mm.
Which is funny when you see documentaries of other tennis players who have, tennis can be, speaking of like a volatile sport, or sport that can be emotional,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys. Nadal sometimes doesn't get enough credit for his approach too. I think like somebody told me a statistic. Rafael Nadal has never once thrown his racket, which is
That's shocking.
for how much he's played. I mean, I can imagine why he's never thrown it at the French Open, because I don't think he's ever like lost at the French Open.
Right. But in other tournaments, and when you get upset and when you're having a bad day and you're expected to win and you don't, you'd think that you'd show a little bit more. He's very stoic.
Yeah. And I guess you have to be to. It's interesting. We've got like performances coming up. It's that time of year at school, right? We got musicals, we got shows, we got senior speech. You know who's here today? I saw Roman Hines with his brother Tristan.
I saw him. Yep.
I
I taught him My first year of teaching Roman. Yeah.
He's a well-rounded generalist, that guy Roman Hines.
He is.
At Swarthmore.
He grew a couple inches at Swarthmore too.
He did. Yeah. I think he said he's going to be a computer science major.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw him, and he's here today to cheer for his brother when he gives a speech.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Neat. Those guys are great guys.
Yeah. Yep.
Speaking of people you like having at school, you know who we're getting back at school? When we think about like Renaissance people, we're getting back Mike Molina, who's been on this before.
Yes, Mike Molina is a well-rounded generalist. He likes a lot of different things too.
Yeah.
You know, he's into athletics, but he's also writing poetry and
writing books.
And he's a reader. He loves music.
Yeah.
I mean, he is probably the quintessential version of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So it's so exciting that he's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I have his book on my bedside table, Jim Huckleberry, the one he wrote.
Yep.
I haven't read it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because, as I said, like I love books, but I've like the summertime for me is when I've got 3 kids, you know.
So when you have 3 kids and they're young, so I saw Bryn Holmes yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours of sleep are you getting a night? I mean, I figure.
Yeah, well, my kids are older.
Your kids are older.
Like they're sleeping now, which is good. So the sleep thing, not so much. For me now, it's like, how many hours have I logged driving them to and from something on the weekend? Is like a more appropriate question. It's because I'm out of the weeds of like the nighttime stuff for the most part.
But how about when they're young? Like if you have 3 kids, what's the nightly? Like, are they waking up in the middle of the night?
Oh yeah, we're talking like kids under 1. Oh geez.
And your kids are pretty close together, right?
They're pretty close to, yeah, they're 12, 11, and 8. So there was a while there where they were close to like Irish twins, the first 2, where that was a little bit of people will tell you. So what was it like when they were like little kids? Like, you're asking me this question now, and since, you know, not a parent yet, right?
No.
Maybe will be one day. But so I used to think before I had kids, is like, I'd ask my mom, like, what was it like when we were really young? She's like, I can't remember.
So all
I
repressed.
don't really remember. Or they're like, it's just a blur. You like, you're just trying to survive, right? Speaking of the nighttime. And then now, so you're asking me the question, and I'm like the same person. It's like, I have some recollection, but it's kind of fuzzy.
You made it through that period.
Made it through, and it was wonderful, and I miss it now that now that my youngest is 8. I would say like little kids, little problems, right?
So when you're driving your kids to these various places on the weekends and, you know, during the week sometimes, are you having conversations in the car? Do you listen to the podcast as you're driving home? Do you turn on some music? What's like the time filler here?
Yeah, it's Dad's car is quieter than Mom's car, is what the kids have given me as feedback. I usually listen to like 89.7 WTMD, and it's like a kind of a more mellow feel in the car. Mm-hmm. And I have to remind myself, my son, who's in 4th grade, who's pretty quiet in the back, we're both pretty quiet in the car rides, just kind of in our little world. I have to remind myself 10 minutes in or so to ask him a question. You know, after I realize we've been quiet. With my daughter, Sienna, in the car, who's 8, it's like to remind her to like breathe, and she doesn't have to fill the airspace.
Wow, she's a talker.
With words the whole car ride. But it's fun that, you know, my kids are all very different. I love them for who they are, but it's funny.
That's great.
Different car dynamic.
So you don't really queue up like a playlist. So you say you're a big music listener. Like, what's your music listening practice? You talked about Justin Baker. I know he told me on one of these episodes he goes down in his basement at night. He has a record player. He'll put the record in and he'll just sit there. He won't go on his phone. He'll just like bask in the music.
And that's cool when you do that with the record, because then you just you get to just play it through and listen to the whole album for all of what it is, right? Like the Power Plant Live's I think they're doing something with a Dark Side of the Moon concert, where it's just you go and you listen to the whole entire album through. And of course that's like a popular one to do, you know, the whole like Wizard of Oz thing where you play it through. Maybe you don't know that, but if you've never done it, like that's a popular thing to do. And so that's a cool way to listen to music, is just to like put on a record and listen all the way through. I love Amazon Music, my subscription to that, because you can just so quickly make playlists. So I make different kinds of playlists and put them together, and then you can pull them up in your car, you can pull them up wherever. And one of the things that I like about that WTMD station is that it plays a lot of like the local stuff and the independent music that you don't hear on the larger stations, because they can do it, because it's listener supported, it's public, right? It's something where they kind of raise money on their own, so they're not beholden to playing you're not going to hear Taylor. There's nothing wrong with Taylor Swift, but you're not going to hear Taylor Swift on that.
It's nothing pop.
Nothing pop, really.
Yeah.
And then it's called Total Music Discovery, which is cool because my love for music is like, I like folk music from the 60s to, 90s hip hop to sometimes like German techno heavy metal, right? Like a weird mix of, and so WTMD plays anything. You could go from, you're listening to Nine Inch Nails playing, right? And then the next song up is like Joni Mitchell. And then the next song is like a polka band mix. It just plays like it keeps you on your toes. Like I was telling Michael in the library, who I know loves music, right? Played for the Ramones. You did
He's great.
episode with Mike. And so I said to him, April 17th, 3 or 4 days ago, Johnny Cash in the White House playing What Is Truth? A song that like I'd never heard before. And it comes on April 17th. And anytime Johnny Cash plays a song, whether it's his or a cover, it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And that came on, I'd never heard it before. And I wouldn't have heard it unless I was listening to that radio station.
That's the best, when you're learning songs as you're listening to music. So one of my biggest hot takes that I catch a lot of grief for, but I think is very true, and I'll stand by it, is instead of Spotify, I don't really know Apple Music much, but Pandora, which people, I don't really know a lot of people who like listening to Pandora much. I go on Pandora and I play a song, and their algorithm is so good that if you choose, the Ramones on Pandora, it will give you songs and artists that are very similar.
Yeah.
But that's how I discover music, is through Pandora's algorithm they have.
Yeah. And that's how I think for all the things that like Amazon or, in terms of like monopolies and taking over kind of stuff, it is a good thing that they do, is some of those like lesser known artists, if the algorithm starts to understand what you like and you're listening to, they pop up and you learn about them, right? Through that, which you might not if you were just listening to the radio.
So Bruce Springsteen was in town a couple weeks ago. Aaron Sluckin went to that. I have to ask him how it was.
In the new Civic Center, right? Or what are they calling it? The Royal Farms Arena that's been redone?
Yeah. Are you
a
Bruce fan?
He's a polarizing musician, that Bruce Springsteen, the boss. I mean, I'll tell you, like, meaning that like the people love the boss, and then there are people who are kind of, I don't know, right? And I have to say, like, I'm in the middle.
You're not a fan.
Depending on it depends on what time period of Bruce we're talking about. Like, I lived in Freehold, New Jersey for a time, and that's where Bruce Springsteen was born and raised, in Jersey. So like, and I was there from like 85 to 89. So we're talking like Born in the USA, The Boss, kind of big stuff, right? And everybody loved The Boss in New Jersey because he was a local guy. So I heard a lot of, I don't think songs like The River, right? Atlantic City, the version that like the band does of Atlantic City is a popular cover of it. I like some of his stuff, but you know what I like even more than him is to think of that time period. That was when Howard Stern was getting really popular on the radio in the 80s, and I remember talk about car rides with kids. This is funny and slightly inappropriate that like we would go to school with my mom driving, and I have memories as a 9 or 10-year-old listening to Howard Stern on the radio as we go to school. And if you know anything about Howard Stern, he can be off color, but he does interviews as good as anybody, right? And he did an interview, a long extended interview with Bruce Springsteen recently. What I can't remember if it was Netflix or HBO, one of those channels.
Well, an artist who's very similar to Bruce Springsteen, who's from Jersey, is the Bleachers. I don't know if you've heard of the Bleachers, but
I don't think so.
Even if you're not a huge Bruce fan, these guys they're kind of, it's a group. They're similar in style to Bruce Springsteen. At least the head guy is, he wears the same kind of outfits as Bruce, and I think Bruce was his idol growing up. They're both from Jersey.
Plays at Asbury Park, that kind of thing, like concerts.
And Bruce is featured in one of the songs.
Okay.
But my dad, he's not a huge concert. I mean, he likes concerts, but he likes his own type of music. And my mom is the biggest concert person you've ever met. Like she'll spend a lot of money to go to a concert and not think twice because she loves it. Like she goes to concerts all the time. She took my dad to a Bleachers concert, and he won't stop talking about them.
All right, I've got to put that into. I'll check it out.
They're good, and especially if you see them live. I mean, they just have so much energy. They I saw them in D.C. and I was like, wow, I get what my mom and dad are saying now. They're very, very good. One of the better concerts I've been to.
All right, Bleachers. Well, hopefully we'll get a lot of concerts coming to Baltimore with that. There was up at Pimlico where Preakness is. We're almost Preakness season, coming up in a month or so, right? A little bit less than a month, I guess. They used to do like the Virgin Festival there, which was a concert, and it was a weekend concert that had, one time the Virgin Festival had Red Hot Chili Peppers, The Who, Gnarls Barkley, the Flaming Lips. So they had this lineup, the Raconteurs, which is like Jack White's band, all at Pimlico.
Wow.
And like after late May, early June. And it was incredible. I hope they get live music. It's nice that it's back in concerts.
Yeah, the only thing is that concert tickets are crazy expensive now. I think because everyone is wanting to go to a concert. Like the Bruce tickets weren't even in question for me. They're a couple $1,000 to get decent seats.
Jeez.
Yeah. Big
bad Ticketmaster too, right in there. That's too bad when that happens. That's one. It's good to see the Orioles playing well, and that you can still go to Camden Yards for like a reasonable price. And even the Ravens games, they're expensive, but at least they haven't gone way over the top. And they kind of balance it out with the food prices aren't too bad there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of the flip at Camden Yards. They jack up the prices, but $10 bleacher seats at Camden Yards. Yeah,
I'm going Friday night to the game.
Are you going?
To the Orioles game. Yeah, they play the Tigers maybe.
Okay. Nice. It's gonna be warm. It's gonna be a nice night.
Yeah, I'm excited.
80s.
I'm excited.
Is Max Costas? Do we have any update on Max Costas? How he's doing?
I don't know. Is he playing with the O's? I mean, he was here.
Yeah,
right?
They signed him. I gotta look that up. But Max came and talk about like great speakers and like awesome, well-rounded. Max was, I guess, 6 or 7 years ago, right? Graduated, went to Maryland, did awesome stuff there. He's a better person than athlete. But that left field wall out there where we hit to Northern Parkway, right? They had to like raise. He was the primary the culprit of like jacking balls over left field into Northern Parkway, right? And maybe he was trying to hit like that speed camera that's right there. Have you noticed that on Northern Parkway when you're going down the hill?
Yeah, they've got a couple of them.
They're
all right around here. There's one right on Roland Avenue where I used to live. It's tricky.
You seem like you're probably pretty by the book, like a DriveWise kind of guy that would do well with like Allstate, like insurance incentives. You know about that?
Yeah.
If you drive, you don't brake too hard, right? You can kind of drive down the price of your car insurance because you're driving well or wise.
Yeah,
right?
I'm decent. I'm good.
You can be honest. Have you ever gotten one of those tickets from
When I
those
first
machines?
moved down here, and I didn't really know that Roland Avenue was 25 miles per hour.
You got one there. I think we've all gotten that one.
Yeah, but
Right.
then I discovered it. Since my car is registered to my parents' house in Philly, my car's from Pennsylvania.
Does it go to them?
Yeah, so my mom was sending me tickets like, yeah, what are you doing? What do you got? Like 3 tickets in the first month of your new job at Gilman.
Right, you're a reckless driver in a residential neighborhood, right? You got to be careful. You can't go 27 there.
No.
What are you trying to? Yeah, those are, I guess, must make a lot of money for the city.
How about the one on the highway here?
Oh yeah, the 83 one.
Yeah.
That
Sometimes I like to just drive slow on there and watch people just get bam, bam, bam.
You can see it
because
light up.
people go fast on that.
It's a dangerous road, the Jones Falls, right? That was not a well-conceived project on multiple levels, right? If you look into like the history of that and the roads leading into Baltimore, it's kind of a wild sociology, like the story behind it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jones Fall it is tricky with the cameras, but I guess, hey, anytime we're slowing each other down, that's ultimately a good thing. I have a ticket right now, actually, that I need to pay. I got on Northern Parkway. I think I was going 42 and a 30, and know what my kid said? She goes, I remember I was in the car when that happened.
Yeah.
You were driving fast. And I said, Kira, 42 and a 30, I'm not sure that was the moment you felt me driving fast, but we'll go with it.
A little backseat driving.
Yeah.
It's good.
And she doesn't even sit in the back seat anymore. Now that she has a phone and she's in 6th grade and 12, she's big shot, always sits in the front. So she's not even a back, she's a front seat.
So are you coaching her lacrosse at all?
I am. That's interesting.
What's that like? Because my dad is coaching. My sister Jenny is in 7th grade now, and my dad and Coach McAvoy, who is the longtime coach at Malvern, are the 2 coaches of my sister's team. And I bet that's a disciplined, tough team.
I bet that's a powerful coaching staff.
Right.
I coach. I'm an assistant coach on her team, and it's fun. I find the older I get as a coach, the more I love being an assistant coach. It's just you can kind of focus on the kids, consult, take a backseat. You don't have to do some of that head coach stuff. That's really hard. Being a head coach is tough. Some of the decisions you have to make, but I try to just support the players and try to be as unbiased as possible with my daughter. But I think that like for any parent who's teaching or coaching their kid, it's tough for both the adult and the kid on some levels, because there's that when do you turn it off, right? Like when practice is over and you're driving home.
Yeah, it's tough not to make a comment about what happened.
Yeah, should we move on or?
Right.
So, but this may be the last year that I coach her. I think I keep asking her, do you like it that I'm coaching, or is it? And she hasn't yet said she doesn't like it. I think if she says she doesn't like it, that'll probably be when I know that I don't like it either. Now,
did you know when you were an athlete growing up and in college, did you know that you wanted to get into coaching? Were you kind of a coach on the field type of player?
I think I really enjoyed my coaches, in particular in high school, so I had a lot of built-in kind of respect and admiration for them, for the way that they did things. And so and some of them were also my teachers. One of them was also a really good English teacher. So I was drawn to that in college when I was thinking about, okay, what am I going to do now that I'm about to graduate? And being in a teaching and coaching environment made a lot of sense to me because of those positive relationships that I had. And I also wanted to be around young people who I thought would respond to good coaching and teaching, which is, I don't know about you, but like when you come across like a really coachable player who you get to just like watch make others better and be like it's really fun to watch and take in and observe. And to find the ones that are truly special, they're not that many of them, right? I mean,
coachable players.
The ones that are going to make everybody around them better all the time and not be in their own, at our age, right? They're high school kids. Right. So high school, I mean, we've had so many of them over the course of the last 20 years at Gilman. There've been many examples, right? But they're not widespread, right? And the ones that are, you can probably, without going into names, right? Like you know who they are. Like this is a football. This is like, I know a lot of these guys. This looks like 98 maybe.
That's Goulin's in there.
98.
Boyle's in there.
This football team. So yeah, Boyle's in here. He would be an example of that.
I think Damien's in there.
Shizimo Para, Damien. Like there's a lot of guys in this group. I see Alex Liskey, who is a really good player. That team of like 40 guys probably has like a half dozen of them that would fit into that extremely coachable, good teammate model. So not surprising that when, Biff Poggi started with that group, that they had a really good coaching staff, but they also had a really good core of players that are going to make that experience like really rewarding for their team, make it a little bit, well, don't want to say easier for the coaches, but
I think part of being a tough player or disciplined player and team is like when a coach says something to you, you don't say anything back. Like not even, you just say, yes, coach, and you just listen and try to say, okay, this is what I need to do. No comment back, which I'm finding, you get some comments here and there. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't need to know like what was going through your mind here.
Right.
I just want you to just not do it again.
It's a really tough skill sometimes, right? Not only for players that you mentioned, but sometimes I think for us as adults in society too, like when people start talking to us and have an opinion or giving us advice about how we could be better. Right. It's sometimes hard not to just want to respond, but like, yeah, but this is why I'm trying to like explain ourselves.
Yeah.
One of the things in the book that I had like earmarked is there's Phil Jackson talks about giving full attention and like listening without judgment and without response, and taking it in, and good leaders, right, or good teammates, good players are able to do what you're saying. I think they can just listen, take it in without trying to like immediately have a response, because usually if a coach is telling you something, it might be a very simple statement, or it could be something that takes a little bit of time to like process, right? And if you're responding to it verbally without processing it and giving some time to think through it, you're probably losing that opportunity to grow.
And I think that's one of the ways that playing sports translates into the world, like having a background in sports. You were talking earlier about why we're doing all this, or why we are so serious about sports all the time. I think one of the reasons is that it teaches you some of those things. Like having been in college and played lacrosse and watched film where I was getting critiqued pretty brutally all the time about what I was doing wrong, and having just to sit there, it makes, if someone comes to observe my class, for instance, and they're critiquing some things that I'm doing, it doesn't even hold a candle to like the coach ripping me on the screen in front of everyone. Yeah, it's right?
a really good point. You make a really good point. You're conditioned to taking that kind of constructive criticism and learning from it. And as teachers, sometimes I think I feel like I certainly need to do a better job of that. When we take stock in ourselves and what we do well, some of the things that we once did well, we don't do well now. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about for myself is to that point of like listening fully and not having an answer. Sometimes as a teacher, a coach, or you're a leader in some capacity, there's a tendency to feel like I need to have the answer, right? If I don't have the answer, that means I don't know what I'm doing, right? When families come through and they're asking questions, like, need to have the answers to what they want to know. But then as we take time to think about what we do well and we don't, for me, I've thought like I need to do a better job of sometimes just being okay not having the answer.
Yeah. Or, I mean, just saying, I don't know in this moment. You know,
Yeah.
I'll circle back with you. Let me just go think about that a little bit. I think that's something that doesn't happen much. And I've really learned that as a teacher here, is that I get questions all the time, even having, you know, read as much as I think I've read and like been immersed in English and American literature for as long as I've been doing this. Someone will ask me a question, I'll be like, I don't know. Let me check it. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Let me look it up.
It's the way to do it, right? For sure, because then there's nothing that they would potentially see through, right? If we don't know the answer, we try to answer it. These kids are so smart, right? They would know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They would know. There's the Google machine now, helps with answers.
So easy.
But is it really, like, is the depth of that answer where it needs to be, though? Like, did you hear about the Wikipedia group?
I heard there's a club meeting today.
There's a club meeting this is, I think, really neat, right? It was maybe like Eric Cow, who sent the email, who's starting a Wikipedia club that's going to work on like how to effectively like be part of the editing process in Wikipedia.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't think that was as easy as people say it is. Like people say you could just edit Wikipedia. I think they have people who do that. I could be wrong.
They do, and they have people who come in swiftly and will change it if there's a egregious false, and I know that happens from time to time. It's cool that they're keeping up with as much as our guys like to use Wikipedia, even though we tell them to use authoritative sources, right? Mm-hmm. I'm glad that we have a club.
I am too.
Right?
Well, it's one of my favorite websites, and sometimes I'll tell my students, like, look, I know that you're not supposed to cite Wikipedia, but to get background information on something, I don't think that there's a better source.
Right, especially when it connects you to all these other sites too. Mm-hmm. Right?
Mm-hmm. And I bet you that's some of what the Wikipedia Club will do, is they'll just sit around and go from web page to web page learning things.
I love when new clubs pop up, right? I mean, you're here at year 3 of this, or, you know, with the Greyhound TV, whenever the Greyhound TV's almost got to be 10 years old now, 10, 12 years old. And then it's like a machine now. When it started, it was essentially like a club, right? That got going, and now look at what it's become. And it's cool to see Gilman kind of trailblaze with some of that stuff. I know there's all these other streaming. Loyola does a pretty good job with theirs. There's other schools that are doing a nice job, but Gilman was at the front of that in this area, right? Mm-hmm. And has done an awesome job with it. And but it's cool how, who knows where you've gone with this, from starting with a Path to Follow namesake after the documentary, right? Mm-hmm. To becoming, you're going to work here in different roles, Jake, for like 40 years plus, wear many different hats. And when it's all, you're going at a clip of 60 episodes a year.
60 a year sounds like a lot, but
50?
Maybe 40.
40 a year? 40 a year. So you're going to, 40 years here times 40, you're going to 1,600. Are there enough? 1,600 episodes.
Yeah, we're moving. Well, hopefully some people are listening to them. I'd love to get some...
How do you gain some of that momentum there?
Well, I think social media helps a little bit. I think having different people around the school and some people from outside of Gilman helps. I think having students who will share it. I've been getting some good numbers on the student episodes because I think they can blast it out there.
Oh, yeah. And they love hearing each other.
Yeah, they love it. Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Right.
But yeah, it's fun. And we did get a newspaper, Gilman News article about, Alex Zhao wrote the just, short little plug for Path to Follow, a little bit about the episodes, and it was great. Very well written. So
that's awesome. Well, you all do such a phenomenal job with it. And it's fun to hear from all these interesting people. I've started listening to your podcasts on long car rides, because you do a really nice job of going like pretty deep into conversations with each of your guests.
Yeah, I mean, I think the balance. I'm trying to find that balance of like good conversation
Yeah.
that naturally gets deeper. Instead
Yeah.
of some episodes, I have questions and it's more of a question response. Like
Mm-hmm.
this episode's been nice because it's back and forth and more conversational, but we're still able to get to the topics we want to get to.
Yeah. So is there anything like else before we kind of wrap? Is there anything that you like to do towards the end? I don't know where we are in like timing of stuff. Are we
Well,
getting...
we usually do the book rec,
Uh-huh.
but maybe I've been doing recently a guest recommendation. So
Okay.
somebody on campus that you'd
Oh,
like to
yeah.
hear from more, or maybe a coach on
Right,
campus
coach
that
or-
you want to hear their philosophies a little bit more. Anyone really, a student.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. So would you want any kind of past coaches or alums, Rex, like that? I've got some thoughts about some people who are around. Like, did you ever interview Victor Abiamiri?
No, I want to. He'd be a good one.
He's here he'd be a good one to tell his story. Getting back to a joint, I wonder, like a joint father-son with like a Rob Hubeck and Peter Hubeck.
Mm-hmm. We need to do another one with Rob before he leaves Gilman or steps down from upper school head.
Yeah, yeah. And about his podcast,
Oh yeah, I was on the first episode.
Raw Justice, right? I mean, that's Alex Likas. Is it John from Timonium?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Who's a legend on radio.
Right.
Alex Likas is a public servant and very good sense of humor, and Rob does a nice job of being funny, detailed, and like the middle guy. I've given him a couple recs for Raw Justice too. I'm hopeful that they make it onto the show, but I know it's high demand.
Oh yeah,
They do a nice job.
They do well, and they're good at blasting it out there too. I see it on Twitter. I see it on
Yeah.
Instagram. Yeah.
So you got to follow their recipe somehow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what they did? The couple that I've listened to, they really know the local scene.
Yeah.
Baltimore. Like they know the neighborhoods, they know the haunts, the food wrecks. They can kind of throw in the Baltimore stuff
Mm-hmm.
or Timonium. Did you know what John from Timonium? Do you know why people love Timonium? Or a lot of people love Timonium?
No.
Because as one of my friends said, like Timonium loves America. And I think what that means, I think Alex Likas loves America.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rob Hubeck, John from Timonium, they all have in common that they love America.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning like they love their community, like where they live.
Yep.
They're proud of it, even if it's like silly.
Oh, they have something to say about every restaurant, every street corner.
Right.
They understand the layout.
They have pride in it. Like, is Timonium Fairgrounds, is that like a nice place to go? Not really. But we still love it that we get to go there, watch the horse races. We got York Road, which is not necessarily like an awesome road. There's still unique stuff to Timonium, to Baltimore. Baltimore is a unique town. We know that in all its different neighborhoods.
That's why they call it Charm City, because it's not like the most beautiful place ever, but it's charming. It's got these pockets of places that people really love.
Yeah, it's a cool town. I think one of the things, I wonder if when we get new teachers here and we're recruiting them to come here, are we doing and I think we do a good job of this, but do we do a good enough job of showcasing how awesome Baltimore is going to be for them, for like work-life balance, with food, with little neighborhoods, the cost of living relative to all that, how far, like how awesome the Chesapeake Bay is, how awesome the beaches are, how awesome Western Maryland is. Like, we need a fan club we'll talk to Mr. Ledyard and the Penn Fellows group and make sure that we maybe this is something we can get started.
You need to take them to an O's game on a Friday night when it's 70 degrees out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drive around downtown. My favorite restaurant, Italian Disco downtown. Have you been there?
No, I've not been there.
Good pizza, disco music, or just old music.
Good pizza, huh?
They play like music videos on the screens and great pizza.
Awesome.
So,
it's a good foodie town. Well,
all right, Coach.
making me kind of hungry.
Yeah, it's almost time for lunch.
Almost time for lunch.
Thank you very much for
Thanks
coming
for
in.
having me
Yeah,
on.
a lot of fun.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one.